So what's up? So go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. You were talking about something like the...
No, that was it.
Yeah. It's funny you were talking about Cash App and Venmo before we hit record. So I actually put a video up of this yesterday, but so I was riding, around yesterday, looking property, doing different things, running errands, and, saw a couple panhandlers, at the intersections and things like that. And I kind of noticed, I think it's because I saw one with a cell phone that I started looking to see if the other ones did.
Yeah.
And all three that I saw yesterday had cell phones. So I came up with this, I think it's a brilliant idea. If I was a panhandler, I would download a Cash App, like Venmo. I would go out, spend, maybe $1 at a print shop and print out a real big QR code. And I would hold the QR code up, right? And then, because think about it, people love a good QR code.
I'm chuckling because
and people don't always have cash now. So it's like I think a lot of people would be willing to pay just for the fact to say that they scanned a QR code from a panhandler going down the road.
Did you Google to see if this is going on anywhere in the world?
I didn't. No, I
wonder if it's already happened.
I'm sure somebody's thought of it. I don't think I'm that fucking smart where somebody else hasn't thought
I don't know. It might be novel.
But if I was like,
coach these folks up.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking. I think whoever did it first could start making some real money because it's so new and you don't see it all the time. But you could also go play into the human psyche. It'd be like, do you want a VIP pass to heaven? Contribute now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of people are programmed, I think, so OCD that I think their OCD wouldn't allow them to get past it with being like, oh, I better do it. What if I don't do this? What if I don't do it? I think you could really play. It's like if you're scrolling Facebook and there's a picture of Jesus, and it's like, if you don't hit like, you're not going to heaven. You know what I mean?
Like the old chainmail messages.
Yeah.
Or emails. If you don't pass this along to at least 7 people, your firstborn will be dead by morning.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? I think it could work. I don't think it's a genius idea.
I'm chuckling because I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think it really would work. It might sound a little absurd, but
I might do it.
That's why
I might fucking do it.
The first image in my head was you doing it, and
yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Go print out a little QR code and show these guys what's up. I know where a few are in town.
Yeah,
they're always there.
Oh, I thought that. I was like, I thought about being like, have you got
coach them up?
Yeah, if you got a Cash App download, let me
we're
show you.
Take your panhandling to version 2.0.
Yes. I really thought about doing it just to see if it really realistically would work, and if it does, it helps them.
Well, they could track their income. It would help them with their taxes at the end of the year.
Yeah. Right? This might be the new occupation, in a world of white-collar welfare, right?
Yeah. Post-labor economics.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. So
I sent you a text earlier.
Yeah.
And it was just a summation of a conversation we'd had about the Bridge Generation or the Oregon Trail Generation or whatever you want to call it, between Gen X and
Xennial.
Yeah, Xennials.
Yeah.
And
the best generation.
Oh, I got a massive itch here. Thank you. And you said it triggered a thought.
Yeah. So I've often had this thought. I've been wanting to discuss this when I did my last podcast. I wanted to get into this, and I've been wanting to do multiple videos on it. And I'll ask you this as a question to kind of spark the conversation. Do you think we tend, or at least one generation, I won't even say one generation or other, but do you think humans in general tend to glorify and protect the past or the first of something they experience too much versus everything that follows?
I'd say the short answer is, probably more often than not, if it's a good experience. I mean, if it's either way, if it's really good, if it's really memorable, if it's emotional, it's going to stick.
Yeah.
Memories tend to land a little more and stick in our memory. Studies show if they're emotional.
Yeah.
So if it was really high first, or really terrible, traumatic first, I've met people, I love the ocean. I love to swim. I love the water.
Yeah.
And I've met people that are traumatized because as a kid they got wrecked in the shore break. They got wrecked by a wave and they won't ever go in the ocean again. And so they might glorify it in a very negative, traumatic way. And then the economic term, law of diminishing marginal return. The more you do something, like that first slice of pizza when you're really hungry is the best piece of pizza ever. The second one's pretty good, I was like, man, that was good. So by the third and fourth and fifth one, you're like, yeah, I'm stuffed. Let's Was that pizza as good as I remember? Oh, yeah, it was,
It's like you're immune to the same slice.
Yeah. Do you have an example in your head that
Well,
you were thinking of?
yeah, I think there's things that just on the surface, music, for example. How many times does a person listen to an artist for the first time, and then the artist puts out 2, 3, 4 albums, and then the fourth or fifth album musically might be better. I mean, that defines, we have to get into what's better or worse, but musically they could be way more talented. They might even sound better, but most people I think are programmed to be like, wow, it's not as good as their first album. And it's like movies. Like most of the time, people never like anything more than the first one. But it's funny.
Why do you think that is?
But I think it's the first time you experience it. And
I've got an alternative version.
Well, it's funny because I do too. So my kids, who are now watching a lot of the movies that we grew up with, sometimes their first,
what's their favorite?
Their first of a franchise. Well, I'll get into that. But sometimes their first of a franchise might not be the first one. Like for example, the Ghostbusters, they saw 2 before 1.
Okay.
So if you ask my kids what's the best Ghostbusters, most of the time they say 2. And so it's like it's not necessarily the first or the original of something. It's a lot of times the first experience of something, and so I almost wonder if we glorify the past too much, because a lot of times it's, and we see things through like our kid eyes, right? And nothing could be, again, it could go negative or positive, but nothing appears greater than when you're a kid. Everything's extrapolated because everything's so new, everything's so big and fresh.
There's wonder, there's amazement. It's brand new. Everything's a new experience.
As far as my favorite, probably they're probably Back to the Mackey's Karate Kid guy, Monroe's more Back to the Future guy. They both love Ghostbusters. I love Back to the Future. I mean, that's like my favorite franchise of anything probably. I think I like the Indiana Joneses, though I would argue that the Karate Kid's a better trilogy than Indiana Joneses, but Indiana Jones and the third one, to me, nothing could touch it. But that was also the first one I saw. That was the first Indiana. A lot of people are like, nah, to never beat Raiders, and I'm like, no, the Last Crusade's way better. But that is the first one that I ever saw. So again, does that cloud my judgment because that was the first experience I had of that franchise?
Now, do you have an alternative take to the first one is the best one, no matter what order it's in, just because you see it that way?
Well, I think a lot of it could be generational too. To be honest with you, and this gets more into the conversation of generations that you started with about the Oregon Trail and the Xennial. I think that the older generation, I wouldn't say older because I still consider us Gen X, because I think we're closer to that than we are, the millennials, just timeline wise.
I disagree with you there, but we've talked about this. And we'll talk about
I guess we're either the end of one or beginning of the other, and that's why we're the Xennials.
Or a micro generation.
The Xennials is the perfect way to describe us. I'm just saying. So I think you could go either way.
Yeah, and I at times will relate more to the Gen Xers, and other times relate more to the millennials.
And that's where I was getting with it, right? So I think that the Gen X and the baby boomers and all them are more inclined to glorify the past. Right, I think that the millennials and Gen Z and Alpha and all them, I think they are more inclined because they grew up in that digital space. And in the future, they're more inclined to not, hold on to the past as much. They don't appreciate the past as much as the people who grew up in the analog space, right? And
what's their relationship with the past?
Well, that's the thing is these kids really live in a disposable world. So they don't have a relationship like we did, and an attachment like we did to past things, because they dispose of it as quick as they see it, especially from a pop culture standpoint. Most of their pop culture are shorts or reels. They're just scrolling, done. And to me, I think it sucks for them, because I think a lot of the stuff that they're going to grow up with is not going to have any shelf life, because it doesn't have any shelf life for 30 seconds after they've seen it. It's just on to the next one. And I think that's not a bad thing. I think that generation's all about moving forward. What's next? So they don't hold on as much. And then I think that the generation behind us, the generations behind us, I think they get caught up in the past too much. And then I think us, the perfect generation, we're the bridge, so we grew up in both spaces. We grew up in the analog world. We grew up in the digital world. So I really feel like because of that, we're able to appreciate the past, hold on to the past, but we also want to know what's next. And we're also about appreciating what's now. And I look at, like, for example, I look at the Michael Jordan LeBron debate, right? That's probably one of the easiest comparisons, right? Everybody wants to debate Michael LeBron. And
What is your take?
well, again, my child eyes are never going to allow me to put anybody above Jordan, right?
Well, there's
But if I get nuanced,
not really an argument for anybody above Jordan.
but if I get if I get nuanced into the conversation, if I start looking into it and delving deep, I can make a case for LeBron
I'm
in a lot of
teasing
ways.
you.
I know. I'm just saying. So my thing is why does one have to be better than the other all the time? Why can't we just appreciate both?
Why can't they just be?
Why can't you just appreciate both? Why can't you be like Jordan?
Labels.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole. We're going. Go ahead.
We'll sidebar that one.
Yeah. If we get into labels, we'll talk about labels in a little while. So what do you think? Go ahead.
Well, no. So back to the movies and music and just my relationship and experience with them growing up, and talking with other people along the way that maybe appreciated movies at a time or music or still do. I think the artists at the time when the first movie or first album comes out are tend to be at their purest. And that's a culmination of like their best work from the previous 5 or 10 years until they finally made it or were recognized, right?
Yeah.
And so they put their best of on that album.
Yeah.
There might be some B tracks and B-side tracks, could be going back to cassette days and records and whatnot, vinyl. Yeah, they were still pretty good.
Yeah.
And then album 2, because of all of that success and all the money coming in, the corporate money machine says, hey, you got to get your next album out quick.
Yeah.
I know we said next year. How about 6 months? We give you 3 months. Go. We'll throw extra money at you. And then they're forced kind of in this, shit or get off the pot kind of moment, pardon my French. And it's, they've made it, so they want to go. And so they step up, and it's not as pure, or it's forced, or, because of the deadline, work, it might turn into work then. And they might not feel like this is pure. It just came about, or they might be in a different stage in their life.
Yeah.
So the things they're writing about aren't hitting the same. I think about like Incubus, for example. They were really hard. They got a little softer, and you kind of mirrored their breakup and their love lives in a way. Now I'm looking back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so same thing with movies. Big success, get it out. We got to do it. We got to do a sequel. Well, and then maybe they're looking at the money's not quite there for the sequel, or the income's not going to come in, so they can't pay for the headliner.
Yep.
Or the A-list headliner from the first movie doesn't want to do it because they know that the script isn't as good, that there's not as much magic or juice in that fruit left to squeeze, and so they pass on it, and then you get a B level or the next grade, and so it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with it. Not saying that's the case all the time. I think that can be the case.
Yeah.
And so back to your point, novelty, your first date, your first kiss, your first time, riding a bike, riding a surfboard, whatever the case may be, hitting a baseball, catching this, making a shot in a game. They tend to stick a little bit more, and there's a high of adrenaline, of endorphins, of serotonin, of all these good chemicals.
What is this?
What if it's traumatic? It could be a flood of negative chemicals, right?
Yeah.
Cortisol and all these other things that dump into you with adrenaline, and some might even maybe argue that it could be addictive. Chase that high.
Well, it's funny because I was actually having that thought in the shower today. Like, do we chase? Are our emotions almost reflective of drugs in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like we're chasing you're chasing that feeling of the first time you heard something or the first time you saw something, and you're constantly trying to recreate that. It's almost like crack, right?
You see people in relationships, they can't make it 6 months or past 1 or 2 years because once the real commitment comes, and maybe they've lost their identity or they're playing a role and then they can't keep it up for so long. But anyway,
and then you have people who had a negative, experience, and they're trying to remove it. They're almost like in rehab. I want to remove that feeling. I don't want that feeling anymore. That feeling's bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting there thinking, I was like, is there like almost like an emotion to drug, like table that you can match certain emotions with certain things? You know what I mean? Like the aspects of each. I thought about, that's where my mind was going today, but I didn't want to bring that up because I thought.
So hold on, let me ask that for. certain emotions that people have or are addicted to, or
could they
tend
match?
to correlate to a certain
I don't know.
drug addiction?
Well, no, a certain type of feeling, like a certain type of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The drug,
Yeah. I was sitting there thinking that in my mind today. Like, I don't know why.
whether it be like caffeine or nicotine,
Exactly.
or marijuana, or
Yeah.
whatever.
And I thought that was way too complex situation for us to sit here and ponder and
that might be
think-
above our
think-
pay grade.
I think so. I'm thinking that, but it was definitely.
I think you're onto something, and I think science has probably shown that in some type of psychological research environment.
Because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about, why do we tend to want everything to be like it was, and I feel like everybody's always searching for that first of something. I mean, think about how many times somebody.
I don't know that everybody is wanting it to be like it always was.
Well, that's what I was saying, and those
Yeah.
people would kind of be like reversed. They'd be like the sober people. I got to get sober, like they would be.
Well, so I know people our age in our demographic, the Xennials,
Yeah.
that didn't have the childhood that you or I may have.
Yeah,
had.
yeah, yeah.
And a lot of them have processed those feelings, but so they don't resent them or have any negative feelings or ill will towards them because it made them who they are and where they are today.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are sober or made a bunch of big changes in their lives, and so they're not hanging on to the past.
Yeah.
They don't want to go back there.
Yep.
That's not familiar territory. It is not anything they want to hang out in. And so even though they're not millennials or younger, they're in the now. A lot of them are in the now.
Yeah.
And some are in the now and future, positive future. Hey, what can I do to not go back there, or to make a better scenario for my kids than say what I was given?
Yeah.
I think those of us that did have maybe a more enjoyable childhood, we might go back there. I've gotten to a place, or I'm working on a place where I don't live too much in the past or too much in the present, because then I'm missing the now, and then. It's not living to me.
That's where I'll try. That's where I've tried to get to as well.
You're getting there.
Because I feel like I've always been stuck. Like I talked about this, I think, on the first episode, either in the past or the future. Because I'm always, appreciating the past and always reflecting and liking to tell stories. But I'm always speculating, what's next? What's next? What's coming up next? Because I think like I said, we lived in that Xennial. We watched this transition happen almost overnight. And now it's like, well, shit, what's going to happen?
So for those that are listening and don't know, can you explain that just real shortly? What Xennial is, between the worlds, and we'll unpack that.
So
for a second.
years ago, they had a time. They have timelines for every generation. Obviously, you've got the greatest generation, the baby boomers, and then there was Gen X, and Gen X's timeline started, I think, was like 64 to like 83, and then that skewed back. And then there was Gen Y was after Gen X. Somewhere along the line, they moved the timeline from Gen X back to like 80 or 79. And then they actually removed Gen Y, and Gen Y became the millennials, and they grouped the younger or later Gen Xers into the millennials. And a lot of the Gen Xers and even people, in the mid to late 70s, early 80s, were like, well, this is bullshit. I grew up thinking I was Gen X, and I don't like the millennials. And then so they really started to hone in and think about this, and they were like, well, wait a minute. This generation really doesn't fall into either place, because they were the generation that watched the world almost change when they were in the middle of having, getting their comeuppance, so to speak, when they were in the middle of their their maturity of their minds really starting to, take shape. And, we watched the world jump from analog to digital right in the middle of those times. And to me, that's what, Xennial really, represents. And that's where, and honestly, I think we should have more micro generations, because somewhere along the line, there's a generation between the baby boomers and the Gen Xers that probably is more like one or the other. And I think grouping these people into like 15-year out, segments probably doesn't
cover the
sense.
nuances within them or on the fringe edges.
This one probably makes more sense than anything, because I really feel like this was the biggest jump in mankind as far as transitioning from technology from analog to the technology we're seeing today. I mean, yes, technology has definitely grown since that the digital world became, more prevalent in our culture. But I don't know that it's grown that much,
Yeah.
It's getting there though. AI is taking it to, man, I don't even want to know where we're getting ready to go. I just know we don't need roads.
It's going to be interesting. So these are all labels that we use to kind of make sense of the world, right?
Yeah.
And for those that didn't live it, when we were kids, things being analog meant that we were bored. If we didn't catch a TV show, we missed it.
Yep.
There was no watching it again. Not a week later, not a month later, not going and renting the DVD or the the VHS. There was none of that. You just missed it.
Unless you recorded it. And you could, but yes.
Yeah, and that meant you had a VCR, which meant you were, in the early 80s, you were pretty well off. And you had to record it. You had to time it and program it. And a lot of us figured that out before our parents could.
Right. Yeah.
And we were bored. The internet was only used in military applications. And so we watched the internet come in. We went from 8-bit graphics on Atari and television and early Nintendo all the way up to now, virtual reality, immersive 4K.
Yeah.
Hey, I think, they're working on that in 8K, right? And,
Yeah.
And so it's been a big jump.
Yeah.
It's been a big jump. We do remember, all analog watches, a whole analog world.
Yeah.
And to now a fully digital one. So what do you think, going back to early on, you said, and I haven't thought about it maybe in this much depth, but your kids everything's disposable.
Yeah.
And so the question I have for myself, for everybody, for you, maybe for us here now is, I'll certainly hear it now because I'm going to ask it. So what do you think the kids will take with them that's not disposable? What do you think they're going to look back on from their childhood and either have in physical form or in memory or motion stored within them that wasn't disposable, if everything is?
I think the non-digital experiences, because I think they're the things they're going to have less of. I think they're constantly in front of screens, and we all are. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I'm not glued to my phone. It's an addiction. It's pretty bad, and I think the world is. But I think more so for these kids, they've grown up with screens in front of them. That's all they know. And we could argue that it's our faults as parents, or just the world, right? But I think the things you have less of, and the moments you have less of, I think typically are the things you probably remember the most, right? Because you're probably less immune to them too, right? So I think the more non-digital experiences you can give your kids, I think are the things that they're really going to help them, shape their childhood and their memories going forward. And it could be anything. It could be as big as taking them to a vacation, or as simple as just having dinner around the table at night with no TV on. So I don't know. What do you think?
I like where you're going with that, and it touches on something we talked about in another episode about less is more.
Yep.
And it makes me. I was just sitting there thinking. I went off in a little tangent, as my brain tends to do sometimes. And before I reeled it back in, I was thinking. The question I had was, what digital firsts or experiences do I remember? So I was vetting what you said in my head. Is what he's saying correct? Do I remember the least, consistent or experiences, the more unique or one-off experiences more? Do I remember the more of the analog situation scenarios and things that happened, or do I remember any digital ones? And I'm like, do I remember the first time I picked up a Nintendo controller? Yeah. I remember playing with my brother. I remember playing with my friends from down the street, from in the neighborhood. I remember, certain levels in games where we were frustrated or we unlocked something that was really cool. Yeah. I don't remember those first, though. Yeah. A lot of them. I was very limited there in the few seconds that I ran through some mental images. I didn't come up with any. So I'm curious if do you remember any first? Like, I don't remember even my first IMAX. I went to a bunch in Charleston when I lived there because They were rolling out like the Matrix on the IMAX and things like that.
I remember the first time I saw movies.
Do you remember the first movie though? You might.
What do you mean? Well, no, I'm talking the first. No, the first time I actually went to a theater and saw, or the first taste I got of a movie or something. I remember times being in the theater, like very specifically. I remember one of the reasons I think to this day I'm so attached to Back to the Future is we went. And and the thing is, it's funny. I don't even remember the movie we went to, but my parents took me to the old movie 6, down right here downtown Salisbury, and I think I was about 4 years old. All right, that's how far back my memory goes on this. And back then, it was like, well, 4-year-olds can only watch G-rated movies, right? So they took me to some cartoon. Again, I can't remember, but I remember being in line to the popcorn, and my parents saying, well, you can't go in there because that's a PG-rated movie, and it was Back to the Future. So me, being the curious little, bastard that I was, I decided, well, I'm going to have to peek in there. I got to see what's going on. So I peeked in. It was the scene of Doc Brown hanging off the clock tower, sitting there.
You remember sneaking in there.
I remember opening it up. I remember watching. I can see it like clear as day. And I think that might be one of the reasons that I've been so attached to that movie my entire life. But it goes back to what you were saying. If you missed it in the theater then, you didn't get the streaming of it 2 weeks later or a month later. You had to wait a year almost for it to come out on VHS.
Yeah.
And I remember when my parents took me to PK Video because they thought I was old enough to watch it about a year later. And we got the VHS. I remember going in. I remember sitting down in our downstairs little basement area and watching that movie with them. I remember a lot of times with being at the theater. That is one thing I do remember from a digital perspective.
What do you think it was about the theater that you remember? Was it the experience? Was it all that came with it? The senses, the smells, the newness. What about it?
I think I took so many life lessons from things, and I think it was also a part of times with my parents. Like my parents, it was like what they took me to do, and not that my parents didn't show interest in me, but like I was telling you before, they very much were consumed with work. So if I got that time with them away from their work, it really felt like this was my time. And I'm sitting here telling you that now, and I'm having, regret in my own mind about how many times I'm glued to work or I'm glued to my phone when I should be pay attention to my own kids. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, like they're starving for that attention probably the same way that I was, though. I don't know, like I was a little different, like as far as I feel like I didn't need it, but maybe I didn't realize I needed it until now, right? So I think that definitely played a little bit of role. And I also took a lot of life lessons from movies. I mean, Karate Kid 3, it's a great example.
Yeah, I was going to ask you for an example.
So I remember going to see, and this is actually a wild story, and I'll tell it. This might take some time, and I apologize if we take too much airtime on this.
Good.
But I remember going to see Karate Kid 3 with my father at the old mall. I remember like being 8 years old after the movie. I remember doing like karate chops in the thing while my dad was talking to somebody. I remember everything about it. And there was a scene in the movie that like literally is impacted my life like almost like no other. And it was the very last scene where Daniel's laying on the mat and he's scared to death of this opponent, Mike Barnes, because Mike's like the bionic Johnny Lawrence. I mean, his guy's like unstoppable. Daniel's done nothing to him the whole movie pretty much. And he's laying on the ground and he won't get up. And Miyagi goes over to talk to him, and he's like, you got to get up. And Daniel's like, I can't. I'm scared. And I was like, this is crazy. Daniel's like, I've never seen Daniel be scared of anything before. This is the guy that's like, he's always antagonizing the bully. He never, but he was legitimately like scared. And as an 8-year-old, I'm like, oh my God, Daniel's scared. And Miyagi says something to him that literally was so simple yet so profound, and it stuck with me my entire life. And he says, it's okay to lose to your opponent, but you must not lose to fear. And Daniel gets up, I'll spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. He wins the All Valley for the second time, and everything goes along. And it's funny because throughout my life, I've been scared of things, but I think most people, it's just natural you're scared of things. But I've always been able to say, you know what, no matter how scared of this I am, I'm going to get up off the mat, I'm going to take it on, because I'm not going to allow myself to lose the fear in this situation. I may lose, but I'm not going to lose my fear. And I could tell thousands of stories about those things. And really, it helped me more with bigger things in my life, like bigger traumas. That lesson helped me more with the, bigger traumas, not so much small things like how to be organized and how to compartmentalize and all that. Now, this is wild. So fast forward many, 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 many years later, so I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, early 40s, kicking ass at real estate, at work, and just, kicking ass. I've got now, 2 kids, wife. I'm doing all the stuff with my entertainment, because I really wanted to tap into my passions, and I have all this stuff going on in my brain all the time. But I never really knew how to compartmentalize and organize my thoughts. And I remember so many days asking the Lord, like, Lord, I need help here. Give me something, help me compartmentalize and separate these things so I can still, work. I can still, tap into my passions, but more importantly, take care of my family and be present for them. And I asked and asked and asked. Well, when I started our last podcast, I started thinking about how could I, draw eyes. And I started thinking about, if I draw eyes, the bigger guests you get, the more eyes you could draw. So I started thinking about, well, I can't get Leonardo DiCaprio, but I may be able to get some smaller celebrities if I go about contacting them. And I was like, well, I'm not going to look up every booking agent. So what I started doing is I started going on Instagram and DMing people that I thought might be smaller time celebrities, right? Well, around that same time frame, it's funny. I actually had the guy who played George McFly in Back to the Future 2 on, which was really cool, right? But around that same time frame, I started Cobra Kai. The show Cobra Kai was going on, right? Mm-hmm. So around that same time frame, the show Cobra Kai was going on, and Sean Kanan, who played Mike Barnes in Karate Kid 3, right? He was coming back to the show. So I was like, what's worth a shot? The salesman in me is like, worst he could do is say no. Mm-hmm. So I sent him a message, I DM'd him. He sends me. You
miss all the shots you don't take.
Exactly. He sends me a message back like within an hour, and he was like, absolutely, here's what it's going to take for me to come on. He wanted me to buy some copies of his book. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I just was like, this is amazing. This is like Mike Barnes. And my wife was like, you're like a kid in the candy store. I was like, you don't understand. Like, this guy played a role in a movie that really touched me as a kid.
Yeah, it was instrumental, Mike.
So he comes on the show, and I'm trying to shorten this up. So he comes on. He comes on the show. We have just great philosophical conversation. Like, I really got deeper into him as a person, not just this pop culture icon, so to speak, that I'm having on my show and all that. We really talked, really jibed. So he's such a philosophical dude, such a good dude. Could tell that he really wants to genuinely, help people. I mean, that's just the card player in me, I think, has a good read on him. So right after I get done, he sends me a message, and he's like, hey, I love the show today. I loved our conversation. I'd like to talk to you more. So I said, yeah, sure. So I get on a conversation with him, and I talk for about 10, 15 minutes. Then all of a sudden, he's like, have you ever thought about coaching? Like, not me coaching, but being coached. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first thing I said to him, no lie, I was like, yeah, I'm not really into all that Grant Cardone shit. And he laughed.
I would laugh.
He just cried. I said, I'm not really into all that Grant Cardone shit, man. Like, that's not me.
He's been in the media for not so favorable things here very recently.
And I've always told him, I said, my best coach has always been the mirror. I'm an only child. I've always just relied on myself and yada, 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 which I've come to realize over the past 3 or 4 years that's not probably the best thing to always do. But anyhow, so he got talking to me and very much trying to get me to sign up for a package of his subscription to be coached by him. And I said, I'll think about it, man. Good conversation, whatever. And I got off the phone, and my first instinct was like, man, I thought this dude was just trying to talk to me and jibe with me. And here he is trying to sell me a fucking subscription to coaching. And then I sat there.
What if he was doing both?
About 20, 30 minutes later, it hit me. I said, you know what? I have literally been almost begging the Lord to give me a lifeline, to give me something that could help me compartmentalize and help me be more organized, which is what Sean was talking about, right? About doing for me. And I'm like, and here, what are the chances that he just happens to send me probably the main character in one of the most, profound main scenes of my life that's impacted me, that has allowed me to face fears and, be able to tackle all the big challenges and big traumas of my life, to now help me with my biggest problem, which are the small things in life. And I was like, man, you know what? Like, if I don't see the correlation here, the connection, then I don't need to be asking for help from anybody, because I'm a fucking idiot. So I called him back and was like, I'm in, I'll do it. So him and I did some sessions, and we did some sessions, and he very much helped me. He was teaching me, you got to get up earlier. You should, try to read in the mornings, things like we talk, meditate, have gratitude, all those things, fix your bed. I was really in a role on that stuff too. Like I was really starting to change.
How was it affecting the rest of your life?
The meditation was just, it was just helping me clear that cache in the morning, so I didn't have all these windows open. So it was, I was really able to, that clarity was providing, the right space for me to compartmentalize.
What about the rest of the stuff?
Things were helping me. My wife loved the fact that I was now fixing my bed. I was getting up earlier. There was a lot of things I was doing that I was improving on that I've, not been good at in life. And then,
so other people were appreciating that as well, noticing it.
Oh yeah. This was about I think this went over like 2 months, 3 months. And then, the holidays hit. So I backtracked a little bit for holidays. Like I'm going to, backtracked a little bit. I shouldn't have. And then I ran into some health challenges, a couple months later. And then it all kind of, what I needed from him kind of changed. Right. So I needed more kind of a, just somebody to talk to more along the lines than looking for somebody to help me, learn how to, be more organized. And as far as business goes, though, like nobody was really gonna help me with, you can't motivate me more than I don't need the rah Grant Cardone bullshit, but that really helped me as far as from an intellectual and a spiritual level and connecting. And it was just, I don't know. And he actually got on and talked to one of my sons too, who was struggling with some bullying, which was really cool because Sean had experienced a lot of bullying in his life. So I gave one of my sessions to Monroe, and I was like, dude, you know how many people get to talk to a celebrity in a movie that you watch to help you? Like, you know what I mean? So it really helped him. I watched him change within probably about 6 months. After that, I could tell it really stuck with him, that conversation.
That's awesome.
But anyhow, sorry, I did not mean to, take up all the airtime today with that story. But
no, it's a great story. Yeah, I think that it will.
I really apologize.
Speak to somebody out there.
What do you have? You give me a story.
Well, I want to say that thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm sorry though. I do apologize.
No, it doesn't deserve any kind of apology.
Yeah.
I asked a question. I don't even remember the question now. We went down a great rabbit hole that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Somebody else might say I was a terrible rabbit hole. You stay away from that one. I think it was great. I think it'll speak to somebody, and it was a good example of life lessons. I think is where we were, or what I heard was life lessons we take from pop culture, from our experiences in childhood, from movies, from music, from those things that we experience growing up through our youth. And we remember in our childhood not being able to get a hold of somebody for days, weeks even sometimes. The kids, for example, the kids I went and played, I had soccer camp with when I was, 11, 12, 13, we wrote letters. And you would try and catch them on a weekday afternoon. But it was long distance, so my parents would read me a new one for racking up the phone bill. Who are you calling out of state? And luckily, they wouldn't find out for a few weeks at least after that phone call. And so, yet now everybody's so attached. I hear regularly from friends, family, clients, etc., just people out there, the anxiety that they get when they feel detached. Something that was very normal for thousands of years until around 2000, when everybody started getting cell phones. I remember in college, I was the thing I sent you earlier. I'm like, when was that? Yeah, I do remember in college, we all had cell phones. This is 1999 to 2003. We would text and call each other for parties. Yeah, we would leave our cell phones laying around and forget where it was. And my mom would yell at me because she was states away and threaten to come down and if I didn't answer. I'm sure that doesn't happen anymore. But now people go an hour, without their phone, 30 minutes, 5 minutes without their phone, and they're freaking out. They're looking at it. And I experienced a little bit of that when I first started getting coached, and it was around my anxiety. It was feeling that like I couldn't, everything was just pulling at me 100% of the time. It was getting to the point of overwhelm between clients, between people I was coaching, mentees, people in my personal life, and just dropping the ball left and right. I finally was talked into turning my notifications off.
Yeah.
And I fought it. I fought it. At the end of the day, it was one of the best things I've done in the last, that was 2018. So I don't know, that was, 6 years ago, 8 years ago now. And so now I have to remind myself that other people aren't in that space. When I'm meeting with somebody and they're constantly checking their phone, they're looking at, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, they might not think it's okay. Somebody else might not think it's okay. I understand. I understand that it's a habit that's been developed by most people over the last 20, 25 years. It was not something we witnessed growing up.
No.
And so when I saw that this morning and sent that to you, I was like, wow, this is a pretty concise explanation of what happened and how we can maybe relate, our generation. When I say we, I mean our generation can relate to both Gen Xers, the people that maybe we looked up to in high school or when we were younger, our older cousins and the guys on the football team, whatever, and our parents, or the cool uncle, aunt, uncle, and then our parents, the boomers, and you're right. I think you're right when you say that they hang on to, the past for them was a lot easier than now. And if you look at the generation that's been born since 2000 or the mid-90s and came up only with cell phones and tablets and this disposable lifestyle, that they've been bombarded with it. They don't know anything else. And going back to one of your initial statements, if I may, Chuck handle us all the way back there. I wonder if, or I postulate if, that younger generation in general is more forward focusing, future focused, because the past wasn't so great.
Maybe.
If you were born in the 90s and one of the first things you remember as a kid, as a 7, 8, 9-year-old, is the Iraq and Afghan war, or Iraq war for us, and then Afghan war.
Yeah.
For them, 9/11, the towers come down, Afghan war, financial crisis of 2008, everybody loses their jobs.
Yeah.
That lasts for 3, 4, 5 years, finally rebounds, and they watch their parents lose their jobs. They watch, then, all the way into COVID.
Yeah.
And now they're adults, what kind of childhood was that?
I think you're onto something because, when most of us got into the workforce, it was around the financial crisis time. We were about 27. We'd already lived it. Everything was kind of the golden years of mankind almost. And you're right. If I was 27, 28, in 2008, and they were young, like probably 17, 18, 14, 15 years old, I could see where that definitely could, shape the psyche in a
their worldview is going to be a different angle than ours.
Yeah, think about how they, I never even thought about it. Think about how they processed 9/11. Holy shit. I mean, I remember waking up on my futon in college and being like, watching it all, take place live, like everybody in the world, being like, holy, but I can't even imagine what that would be like watching live at like 8 years old or 7 years old.
Yeah.
You're right. I think you're onto something there.
I mean, we were in college, so our eyes were opening to the world, right?
Yeah.
We were waking up to, okay, maybe the world's not always, rainbows and butterflies all the time. There's some shades of gray and some darkness out there too. And then things like that happen. Yeah, at 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, how do you rationalize that? As a parent, how would you, I would think I would have trouble, and I have sympathy for those parents, or at least compassion for those parents, that, how would you explain that and rationalize that to your kids?
Yeah.
I'm thankful my daughter's not paying attention to those things right now, and she is very limited with what we share out there, and she lives a lot in nature by design and just activities wise, that she's insulated. She's a little isolated right now, and I know that won't always be the case.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how, folks like you and folks in our past, other parents, I mean, they did it. Obviously, they were fine. We all have gotten here. How you do explain that to your kids and help them make sense of it.
You think about, I mean, even this new generation, think about, the world they're living in isn't the greatest world. I mean, they had to deal with COVID, which we never had to deal with. And now they're dealing with, unfortunately, it gets talked about a lot, the Epstein situation, which has got to be pretty tough, for young minds to talk about it. I mean, they're talking about it at school because they're hearing about it.
Well, it's tough for people our age that I'm talking to, and older people,
Mind-blowing,
that had never thought something like that in the world could exist.
Yeah.
And now are having to make sense of it. Their whole worldview is changing.
Yeah.
And what that'll do to somebody at 40, 50, 60 years old or 30 years old, any age really, when you thought the world was one way, and then the next day you wake up and you realize there's so much information saying that, hey, the world doesn't operate like that. It actually operates like this. And it's not as pretty as the world you did live in your head. And so it's an interesting place.
What's funny is, what I think the generation that's probably surprised but not as shocked about it all is our generation. Like our parents, like my parents are just like, this is crazy. I'm like, are you not reading this stuff? And our kids are too young to really process it all. So when they hear it, they're kind of like really confused. But our generation's like, no, like we've been trying to tell you, like, the world's not what you think, because I think we've been going down the channels of finding alternative means of media and getting information from different sources that, isn't the programs, right? Isn't the programming that, the powers that be always want us to see. And I think that's opened our mind. I think we're a lot more open-minded too. And I think that's allowed us to not be as shocked by things because of our open mind, and the past generations probably are a little more narrow-minded because of, the way they were fed programming, which we talked about in another episode. And then the current generation's probably a little more narrow-minded because of how they're fed. And we were, we had that well-roundedness of a little bit of everything. And I think we're so open-minded to the past, to the future, to so many different things, because we grew up in, a very, exactly. Yeah.
It's a very evolutionary time. I was reading in the comments section of one of these videos, discussions around the Xennial and the Bridge Generation, they were calling us, I think. And in the comments, however, I got cracking up at all the people commenting that we were actually the Oregon Trail generation.
Yeah,
and the reason being, or how traumatic that was, everybody dying of dysentery or a broken wheel wagon. But it was, and I think the reason it resonated with me was it was kind of symbolic. That game is symbolic of our generation, forging into the unknown with technology and what's this all going to do. And here we are 30, 40 years later, realizing maybe it's induced a lot of anxiety and anger based on these algorithms and capturing attention. And maybe too much of a good thing isn't a good thing.
It's not. You're right. Too much of anything's not a good thing.
No. So what do we do with these thoughts and information, and where do we go from here? Talking about less is more, understanding that maybe we've kind of, taking ownership of it without blaming any past generations or anybody in particular. Hey, look, we got here. I was on this ship. You were on this ship. We were all on this ship together. Some might be steering the ship or pointing it in a certain direction that we're on. We were rowing it too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I'll call myself out in a second.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think, where we go, I think we have to apply what we know would probably help society. The problem is not knowing, it's applying. right? And
knowing's half the battle.
knowing's half the battle. Yeah, there you go, right?
There's a reason I say that.
I know. It jives really well with the conversation. But, you know,
It jives really well with where we are.
I think
in life
we
and
need to
this
stop trading. I think we need to start trading our own convenience for the long-term benefit of humanity. And what I mean by that is, yes, it is more convenient to give your kid a tablet, you know, to babysit them. But is that going to be good for them long-term?
What's convenient in the moment might not be convenient 30 years from now with what's been created.
And the thing is, I think a lot of people think that you have to be, you know, in politics or in somewhere, in, you know, a level of control to change the world. But I don't think that's the case. I think everything's more on a micro level. If everybody could just do their part and control and govern their own household or their own whoever they're responsible for, which is your kids. I mean, they're who you're responsible for. You know, I'll often say, you know, I'd love to get into politics, but right now I'm not even going to think about that. Actually, I don't really want to get into politics because that's a whole other conversation. But I don't need to do that because I was given 2 little boys to govern. You know what I mean? That's who I'm governing, right? And in order for me to govern them properly, I need to start taking my own advice, which I don't. I can sit there and tell you all day long, I think, you know, we should have a certain amount of, you know, screen time a day or a week. And I need to apply that. But chances are, I probably won't do it. You know, I just being, I'm not
Would
saying.
it be helpful if I held you accountable for something here?
There you go. Yeah, you could hold me accountable, right?
What's one thing you can do?
That's the thing, you know, is I think, and that's a whole other thing. Accountability is a whole nother, I think, way that society could change if people were more accountable for their own actions and did hold their sides accountable. You know, I think that's a big problem too. You know,
and that can be done without judgment.
Exactly.
And without, yeah.
Well, the thing is people's minds typically aren't going to change by the people on the other side constantly putting down what they're doing wrong and constantly hating on their side. But people's minds might change if somebody on their side says, you know what, I don't really think this is right. Like, I could still be, you know, for this political party or for, you know, under this label or whatever it is, but I think we're wrong here. And then maybe more people on that side will be inclined to do that. The problem is most people won't do that because everybody's so tribal that they don't want to break free from the teams they root for. You know, no matter what, it's like all or nothing. There's no nuance to it. So I think accountability is a big, big part of, and taking ownership of things is a big part of changing society and the world too. That might be another conversation. Labels is actually a thing I wanted to get onto today. You mentioned labels.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I don't like the fact that people are so programmed to have to think that they have to follow their label. And I'll use an example. So the word rhino, right? I think we talked about this.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was until you shared that.
So they call Republicans, you know, who don't follow the script or whatever.
Republicans in name only?
Yeah, rhinos, right? Yeah. And so everybody's like,
oh. So Republicans that don't follow the script.
Yeah, he's a rhino, he's a rhino, he's a rhino, right? And you know, I've like thought about this, and then I'm like, you know what? I think the rhinos like should be celebrated, not put down, because they're the ones that are willing to say, I'm not going to go along with every single thing this party says because I have principles that conflict with X or Y or A, B, C, D, G, or F, you know? And to me, that should be celebrated if you're willing to take a stand on your own principles against your party, not put down or condemned. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think we've evolved enough as humans to move past the party labels.
I hope so.
Well, how do we do that? We got to put them down. I went and registered as an independent last year.
Yep.
The easiest way to lead, according to John Maxwell, is by example. I've been adopting as best I can that principle and being the change I intend to see in the world.
Yeah.
United we stand, divided we fall. Why does anybody have to wear a political label?
1000% agree.
You know, it makes sense because the mind puts labels on things to make sense of them,
Yeah.
to have clarity, understanding, to survive. Threat, non-threat. Danger, safe. Hot, cold. So we labels make sense. They're natural. You can't get away from them.
Yeah.
Right. And our mind naturally tends to want to go there.
Yeah.
Yet I have this belief, and this is my belief, that we've gotten to a place where we can put some of those aside, or we don't always need them.
Exactly.
Or maybe they've been given to us for a reason. And that reason may not be serving anymore, or the highest serving anymore. And so, what can we do about it? How do we change? Lead by example.
Yeah. The biggest lie that we've ever been told in politics is probably a pretty bold statement.
Yeah. What's the big?
that independents have no power. Because let me tell you something. You know who holds all the power? The independents. They control every fucking election.
Can die.
They control every election. Every election, you're fighting for the
away.
middle. So imagine if everybody removed the label, and you didn't know which side you had to pander to or not pander to. If everybody was independent, it'd be really hard to control the masses, and that's why they don't want people to be independent.
At the risk of dating this, and yet I don't think that it will. There's good people and there's bad people everywhere. But generally speaking, and generally speaking here, do our current politicians have our best interests at heart?
No,
They have whose?
they have their own or their donors.
Right.
Yeah,
It's us versus them.
100%.
And putting labels on us, dividing us,
Yeah,
keeps us fighting each other instead of realizing that.
yeah,
That there's only one higher power, one supreme power, and that we're all pretty much the same.
yeah,
We might look a little different. We might think a little differently. We all just want to enjoy our lives.
exactly.
We all just want to enjoy our lives.
Yep.
And I think about that a lot here lately,
I think us is the right label to put on it too, because often I'll say, like, you and I often talk, like, we're more in the middle, right? But it's like, okay, like, that's fine. Even though we're in the middle, that's still kind of a label, right? And then there's left, there's right. But the thing is, no matter what side you're on, if you're in the middle or whatever, you're still grouped into us.
yeah,
You're still us. It's all us.
it's all us.
It's all us.
I think of the Pink Floyd song, Us and Them.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about artists and how certain artists, are better earlier in their careers because they're more pure and natural and everything. Floyd is the anomaly. Floyd got better, I don't say much better, but Floyd got a lot better late in their career.
And for me, it's
Right?
the middle ground. It wasn't early, it wasn't
Yeah.
late.
What
It
are
was.
you thinking? Obscured by Clouds, Momentary Lapse,
Metal's my favorite.
Oh,
album.
I love metal. Yes.
Metal's my favorite album.
Saint Tropez, baby.
The whole thing, beginning to end. They have so many albums that you can play from beginning to end, and you don't want to miss a moment in them. I don't.
What's your favorite song on metal?
Oh, I don't know. There's so many moments. There's,
You can't answer that.
yeah, I'm playing like,
Floyd albums are one body of work. You can't. I do love Saint Tropez though.
and there's moments where I just went back in my memory
Yeah.
of like sitting there headbanging.
Yeah.
At a little shack in Ocean City in some summer of 2001
Yeah.
or 2 with my buddies, because that was when I discovered that album.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to hear it all the time.
Yeah.
It's blitzed. Just put that on and just feel it. And I'm sure there are other ones.
I like Obscured by Clouds a lot, and it's around that same time frame. Obscured metal. They were all in that kind of middle ground. I love that album, and they have a line that I think jibes a little bit with this, and it says it's off the song "Free 4." Memories of a man in his old age are the deeds of a man in his prime. Love that line. So let me go ahead.
No, I was just going to touch on real quick that my good friend Chrissy, and there's probably some technical academic term for this, but she insists that memories that form are the ones that are heartfelt. So good or bad, traumatic or euphoric, those are the ones that are felt. So my first experience with Pink Floyd isn't the one I remember the most. And there's a few Pink Floyd moments with friends, and it was the experience, or that hearing that song for the first time, or discovering the lyrics in it for the first time, or the guitar, or whatever was going on. And Echoes, when I first Live at Pompeii. I mean, we watched that on repeat for months. And there were other artists, and like that, I was just thinking, and this is what got me to touching on in the very beginning, what do we remember most? There are musical moments where, there was a bad breakup or kind of a not fun memory of my childhood or teenage years related to that song or that band that I don't want to touch it again. Yeah. Or I hear it come on, I'm like, I go back there to, 1994, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I don't want that. So heartfelt memories. I think that moving forward with the kids is what I think about with my daughter and friends, and it's given me a little bit, it's made it a lot easier to put my phone on airplane mode or to set it down or aside or just on the charger all day at the house and really, just go check it when I intend to check it. Is because I've gotten to realize or understand that those moments in presence, that's where the juice, that's where, beauty of life lives.
Let me ask you a question. Let me invite you for a little story time, because I told a long story, and it's in the same lane as heartfelt memories and the musical conversation. Okay. More specifically, Pink Floyd that we're having. Mm-hmm. But I, like you, we loved going to shows back in the day, and you told me a story one time about being at Bonnaroo. Late, I think it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and it's one of those.
No, it was sunset. Oh, which one? Which?
Okay,
got a few boxes.
So you told me a story, and I want you to share it, because it was like, I wasn't even there, but you told me about, like, the
Pink Floyd one.
Pink Floyd was Shine On Crazy Diamond by was it Fish that did that? Who opened it?
It was The Dead back.
The Dead, yeah. So tell us. I mean, this is awesome, and I just I felt like I was there when you were telling me that story.
Yeah, so this was. Thank you for that reminder, that memory, because it was just a magical moment. The energy of the whole place. So it was early Bonnaroo. I think it was Bonnaroo 03, and it was super hot for days. I'm talking like in the mid upper 90s, middle of Tennessee. Humidity, heat index over 100. Yeah. There's no shade. Everybody's sweating, dehydrated, and we were just waiting for. Everybody was praying for some cool weather. So we got these thunderstorms that came in. It soaked the place. We were kind of thankful for that. It cooled it all off for a little bit. Everything was muddy, and then, the heat came back, humidity came back as soon as the storms lift. Yeah. As they lift, and then the music could stop, because we had all this crazy lightning, and which, in the middle of a field with, 80,000, 100,000 people and nothing but metal cars and tents. Doesn't give you a whole lot of safety and security. So anyway, that all stopped. We were enjoying when in Rome, be in Rome. We were enjoying all of the extracurriculars that came with that experience. And storm lifts. We head over to the main stage. I had not witnessed the Dead or anything quite like that yet. I was probably 21, 22 maybe. And the clouds lift, and just as they're lifting, just as the substances are kicking in, the sun is setting, the rain is lifted, the Dead come on and open with Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And the organs, I just remember them vibrating, feeling them through me, even though we were pretty far back. Just a little behind the sound booth, I guess, or the sound stage, and pit, whatever you want to call it, just resonated. And it felt like it was just this moment that time stopped. Yeah. That I can remember the sunset, I can remember the orange and the purples and how crazy the sky was, the trees moving, and I felt it. And I said, if I, that's the song I want to be I played at my eulogy at my,
Yeah.
at my celebration of life or whatever. If there was one to be had for me, that'd be a fun song to go out to.
So, you know, it's funny because you're a huge Floyd fan and we're not that far apart. But, and I'll ask you this because it kind of, I'm still kind of confused to how he had never heard this before. But your brother, did he not listen to a lot of Floyd? And I'll tell you why.
No. He was more into like STP and Nirvana and a little bit more grungy stuff at that time.
So about, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, we went on a ski trip, and it was probably, I don't know, it was 1, 2 in the morning. Him and I had a few drinks in us, and we were out in the hot tub together. We were chilling, and I think Sean Smith was with us. He had left. He had gone to bed. It was just Brian and I. And I've got, you know, all kinds of good songs on the playlist for the mountain, being up and, you know, trying to feel that euphoric mountain experience, you know. And it was Shine On You Crazy Diamond from Pulse. You know, I just think Pulse is probably the Mike Jordan of live, experiences. Yeah. So I put Shine On You Crazy Diamond on, and Brian acted like he had never heard it before. And of course, the intro to Shine On You Crazy Diamond is arguably the greatest intro to any composition of music ever. And he looked. I said, "You've never heard it?" And he was really like, "Oh my God," because you know you've got a lot of pieces to that music.
It's like the version that night I went back and looked it up. It was, I want to say 17 minutes long. It's on YouTube. I found it years later, just not too long ago.
But it blew my mind that I was like, "How have you never heard Shine On You Crazy Diamond?" And then knowing you like, I mean, your brother's fucking Wayne Smith, bro. Like, how do you never heard this song? You know.
We just had different, life paths that crossed over a lot.
Yeah.
When I was getting into Pink Floyd, he was in a different place in his life.
Yeah.
He was listening to different music than that. And it is interesting how close, two people can be and not know that.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
That's all. There's a conversation. Two people that grew up in the same house environment and went
a year and a half apart,
two separate directions. Or oh man, that's a good one. And maybe we'll have that next time. But speaking of next time, it might be a good way to end this one. And I'll tell you, talking about Shine On You Crazy Diamond might just be the perfect way to wrap it all up too. Because what's the beginning of Shine On You Crazy Diamond? Remember when you were young? Yeah. You shine like the sun, right? So that might be the ultimate line to wrap this episode in a bow. And speaking of shining like the sun, if you guys want to go into some dark matter with us to help you shine later on, Wayne is about to lead us in a little meditation. So wherever you are, wherever you may be listening, sit back, relax, and enjoy the sweet, sweet sounds. Wayne Smith.
Yeah, I'm going to do thank you for that intro. And for those of you that would like to join us, we're going to do a little meditation here. A short one today. This one's very pointed, intentional. It's good for shaking off any excess energy, emotions. It's called a clearing breath. And we use this, I use this, was encouraged to do this before each coaching call, just to kind of reset and ground myself. And so, with that being said, if you'd like to join us and you're driving, go ahead and park that car, hit pause if you need to. Otherwise, get in a nice, comfortable seated position or laying down. Whatever speaks to you. And let your hands settle in your lap, overlapping your hands, fingers, laying your palms face down or open, face up on your knees, whatever feels comfortable. Just settling into our body here. Taking inventory as we relax, closing our eyes. We're letting them settle at a nice, soft, 3/4 gaze. And with this one today, we're just going to let it all out. We're going to shake off. We went through some emotional spaces there, and so if you're ever feeling wound up or in a spot, you got some energy within you, some emotions within you that you'd like to let go of. This is an exercise that I have found helpful amongst many other before me, and I'm sure many after me. So as we're getting comfortable here and settling into our breath, I'm going to invite you to take a few deep breaths with me. Deep inhales through the nose, and we're going to go deep out the mouth to the point that want you to hear your own breath. I want this exhale to reverberate through your chest as we let everything out. So you're going to hear me breathing really deeply. You may hear my buddy Matt here doing the same thing, and I invite you to drown us out with the sound of your own voice and breath as you join us on this clearing exercise. So for at least 3 breaths here, I'll go ahead and start us out here. We're going to take a nice deep breath in when you're ready, and let it out. Again, following me, nice deep breath in and out. Feeling that breath exhale reverberate through your chest when you're ready. And out. Let's do that one more time together. In when you're ready. And out. Let's settle into a relaxed breath, maybe extending the exhale a little further. Slowly bringing our breath back to a normal pace and cadence with each breath here. A few more, and when you're ready, bring that breath in through the nose and out through the nose when you can, if you can. A few more here together, extending that exhale again, if you can, through your nostrils. At your own pace and leisure, again, extending the exhale a little longer than the inhale. And keeping our breath through our nostrils if possible. Whenever you're ready, gently bringing your awareness and attention back to your body. How soft it might feel, at least a little more relaxed than before when we started. Gently bringing some movement back to your toes, fingers, lips or mouth, before your eyes. Letting the light in last if you can. Just taking in the last fractions of this moment. And that's an exercise that, if you didn't have it in your toolbox before, I trust that it's there now. How was that?
It was it was weird because obviously you know which way you're moving, but you know how you wake up sometimes and you fell asleep this way and you woke up that way.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, like opened my eyes this way with, obviously way more conscious than if I was sleeping, and didn't realize. I was like, whoa, what am I staring this way for? Like I lost track of the fact that I was moving, which by the way, moving, hopefully Maurice can get the squeaks.
Yeah.
Because I was noticing that, and it's like people might be able to put up,
distracting.
and people might be able to put up with it during the podcast. But if you're meditating, we might need to get that. Speaking of the podcast, it's funny because I could have had this. We could have gone on the conversation we were on today probably for like 5 hours.
And perhaps we will.
Yes, I didn't want to cut it off, but I was like, man, it was like that Costanza moment where it's like you got to leave on the top, and it was like that perfect moment. I was like, oh my god, if we could end this with the beginning of Shine You Crazy Diamond, because I felt like it jibed so well with what we were talking about. I was like, we got to leave. We got. All right, I'm out.
Memory and a fun high for me to end on.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. Remember Costanza? He's like, all right, I'm out. I'm going.
Yep.
Remember that episode? Yeah. So, yeah, good time.
Well, for those of you that stuck around this far, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes. Yeah.
And that, just to break down that exercise, it's a clearing exercise, clearing of energy. It can be a little adrenalizing at first to some people. And hopefully with the breath settling into the nostrils for the inhalation as well as the exhalation.
Yeah.
Will calm that parasympathetic nervous system and allow after that energy's kind of been released.
I can hear your breath, like when I can hear them coming through my headphones.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, this is like, I was like, this is okay. All right.
It's fun in a studio environment or a classroom environment to hear everybody else's. Sometimes I won't be fully present and I'll get a little tickle out of somebody else's breath and like, wow, that was powerful. That was different.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that, or
Yeah.
So for whatever that was, I trust it was supposed to be. Anyway.
All right. Good times.
Good times.
Good times.
Awesome. I appreciate you.